Guys, welcome back, and today I'll be doing the next part. Well, not the next part for anything, actually. I'm starting a new What If. I know it's been a minute since I've started a new one, and I've been wanting to do this one for maybe a month or two now. It's kind of weird, it just sort of came to me, and I looked it up, and it has been done before, obviously, but I want to try doing my own variation on it. After all, it's about a character I actually weirdly like. So I hope everyone's looking forward to it, and let's get straight into it. Now, first off, let's get into what this is. This What If is about what if Raditz came for Goku early. Now, to give you an idea, it's going to be for a different reason than why he came for Goku in canon. And the reason I have is probably going to be the fact that Raditz happens to be quite close to Earth and decides that he should come and pick up his brother now. It's not that Goku is needed for a mission, it is that he's just in the general vicinity. So the first step I needed to do was decide when Raditz should come. After all, I wanted it to be a bit later on in the story. If Raditz came for Goku straight off the bat, it would be pretty boring and there wouldn't be too much of a difference going on. So I decided I wanted it to be at a minimum after the first tournament Goku entered. And another thing is I didn't want it to be too late, as there isn't too much breathing room in between Dragon Ball and the arrival of Raditz. So I decided upon doing it during the battle of Goku and Demon King Piccolo. This is kind of in a sweet spot for me. It's late enough into the show that Goku has already got these morals that he likes to follow, but it's early enough that there is enough change where I can play with the timeline a lot. So let's get into it. Now, we join our heroes during the battle between, like I said, Goku and Demon King Piccolo. But one thing changes here in this timeline. During this battle, a Saiyan pod lands on Earth, and out comes Raditz. He activates his scouter trying to pick up whatever he can, and on this weak planet, there's only really some high power levels, and upon picking up the highest one, he sees that there's two relatively high ones near each other, with him flying off towards this battleground. And when he arrives, he catches the tail end of the battle between Goku and Demon King Piccolo, with Piccolo still spitting out an egg. And from what Raditz can see, Goku might have just made himself top dog. After all, he doesn't really understand what's happening, but Raditz is impressed. After all, he's very impressed by the fact his brother, at such a young age, has so much tenacity to him, unwilling to go down, even though he's very heavily injured. But Goku's power is nowhere near as strong as it should be. Eventually, after the battle had ended, Goku turns around and looks up to the sky, seeing a very weird man floating in the air, and he notices that both himself and this man have a tail. Goku, not really able to talk much right now, sort of just blurts out with, "Hey, we're kinda similar," and points to his tail. Goku laughs at this, and Raditz comes to a realization that his brother might not be the Saiyan he was expecting, which does give him an idea that maybe that's why the planet's still together. Something must have happened to Kakarot years ago to make him so soft now. Raditz lands near his younger brother, and he starts explaining and asking Kakarot questions, but when he calls him Kakarot, Goku doesn't respond, with Goku explaining how "you must have me mixed up with someone, my name's Son Goku." But Raditz goes into it a bit more, explaining how he's actually something called a Saiyan. Much like normal, he gives the same amount of information as he did in canon. Now, while this is all going on, the likes of Tien, who was nearby during the battle, and after seeing Goku kill the Demon King, had started to head towards there, but saw Raditz land nearby. Now, for some reason, Tien's instinct told him not to go near there. After all, something about this guy is suspicious. He can fly, the Crane School's secret technique, so he decides to watch from a distance. And from afar, he's just trying to figure out what is being said and what's happening as much as possible. Now, luckily for Tien, he's managing to stay out of the sight and luckily stay off the scouter on the Saiyan. Raditz hasn't noticed it. He's turned off his scouter and is too busy paying attention to his younger brother. Goku and Raditz talking to one another for a little while, with Goku learning how that person he's talking to is actually his older brother. And Goku then gets told that it's time for him to join himself and the other Saiyans, taking on his Saiyan heritage, and finally to rule the galaxy. Keep in mind, he isn't here out of need, like in canon. He just happens to be here. He remembered Goku while he was on a mission very close by, and decided to grab his younger brother now instead of later. So, this is just not a necessity, this is just something he's going to do. With Goku explaining how he doesn't want to, however, he seems like he's quite a strong guy, maybe they could spar together sometimes. But this really isn't an option right now. Goku is fatigued and he's injured, so he's in no position to fight. And Raditz expresses the fact that even if this low-class warrior was able to fight, he is far outclassed by his older brother, with him starting to walk towards Goku and grabbing him. But something to note here is that Raditz is also a bit weaker than he was when he originally arrives in canon. He would have lost the fact he gained some Zenkais over the years, but it doesn't matter because Goku is also weaker. Like I said, Goku is refusing to go with his brother, soon explaining how it isn't an option. The older brother does grab him, but Goku does fight back a little bit, trying to land a punch or something on him, and eventually he does, and when Raditz doesn't flinch or anything, he's sort of nervous. Raditz, kind of annoyed by this, grabs hold of the tail, which is hanging out on display by his younger brother, and starts making his way towards his ship. Raditz realises something in this moment though. He doesn't know where his brother's ship might be. Doesn't have any way of getting hold of it either, so he looks at his younger brother and comes to the decision that he's small enough that they'll both be able to fit inside one ship, which is going to be a bit uncomfortable, but they only have to travel for a few days, not too long, to get to the closest Frieza planet. Now, after all, the only issue would be is that if Goku was to wake up and start putting up a fight, but he's also too weak to do anything, and the area is so confined that nothing he could do would cause any significant damage. Raditz, after coming to this conclusion, flies off, and over in the distance Tien watches with horror. Tien managed to pick up a few things that was said. He heard something about Goku being alien, he heard something about that guy being his brother, and he heard something about Goku having to head off into space and never return. Now, Goku is Earth's saviour at this point in time, and Tien just watched him leave, and he's unsure of what he could have done or can do. So for now, Tien does the only logical thing he can think to do. Try and get strong enough to maybe stop that guy. Tien right now hasn't really got the ability to sense ki, and he just sort of knows that if Goku's punches weren't hurting him, he's severely outclassed. So Tien starts heading off towards the only living fighter he knows right now. This is Yamcha, and right now I'm going to leave Earth for a while. I might cover the stories of Earth later on, and at some point we might end up back here, but for now I'll probably leave Earth alone. Now, I'll cover it a little bit at the start of the next part, but that's only if people want to see another part of this What If. Now, back with Goku and Raditz, we see Raditz getting into his ship and putting his younger brother on his knee. While in the ship, he knows it will be uncomfortable, and he sets coordinates to the closest Frieza planet he can get to, with this only taking him a minimum a week, at max maybe 2. And during this whole trip, they are both in a deep hibernation in the pod. I believe the pods do put you in a hibernation, and if not, I apologise. I don't remember, and I always assumed there was. Now, after the travel, and they land, Goku wakes up in a new place, unsure of where he is. He looks behind him and sees that he's in a small confined area with the person who claims to be his brother and who kidnapped him. This makes the child panic a bit, and he jumps away very fast, far away from Raditz. He takes a fighting pose, however he soon realises that he is severely outmatched. A few Frieza soldiers begin to point blasters at him, with them turning on their scouters and one even taking a shot at Goku. This shot connects, and at first Goku was feeling confident, but after feeling the blast from that one soldier, he realizes he might be outmatched. But before any more shots are fired, Raditz shouts out for the soldiers not to shoot at him. He's so weak it will kill him. With Raditz then heading towards his brother, and Goku almost goes to start another fight, but Raditz quickly grabs hold of the tail and holds him in the air, carrying him into the building. Goku yet again falling weak and is carried around for a while before he can smell food, with Raditz dropping off his brother near a cafeteria, telling him that they both need to eat up and need to be ready for whenever the other two Saiyans arrive. With Goku almost about to argue with his brother, but then hears his stomach growl, and for now Goku calls a temporary truce. The two begin to eat, with Goku scoffing down loads of food very fast, with him thinking the food isn't as good as the food on Earth, but he still continues to eat, needing to get his strength back up. Now over with Raditz, he is also eating a lot of food, but in a much more mature and sensible way than his brother, but he is still eating kind of fast. After a while, Goku is full, and he goes back to try and convince his older brother that he should let him go home, back to Earth, with Raditz just ignoring the young Saiyan and telling him that he needs to follow him. Goku at first is against it, but when Raditz shouts out, "Kakarot, follow me!" Goku begins to follow, and sort of says how his name is Goku, not Kakarot, but Raditz just ignores this. For a while they walk until they eventually arrive in a room with a load of Saiyan armor everywhere. Raditz quickly talks to one soldier there, and after a while, the soldier comes back with some Saiyan armor. Raditz looks at it, takes a look at Kakarot, and then throws it towards him. Goku is at first confused, looking at the armor, and then looks down to see that his gi is destroyed. Not destroyed, but it's got scuff marks, it's cut, it's very damaged. But Goku refuses to change, explaining how he won't be here for long, so it's alright. Raditz, getting more pissed off with his brother, pretty much just lets him do this one thing. He takes the armor off his younger brother and passes it back to the soldier, before walking out of the room and heading off to a different section. Raditz gives his brother a tour of this building, and after about a few hours, Raditz finally decides it's time to settle down for the night. He heads off towards some sleeping quarters, with Goku still following him, and shuts the door behind him. In this room, Raditz begins to talk to someone over his scouter, with Goku confused at what he is doing, and for the first time all day actually has a moment to think about where he is and what's happening. He wants to try and escape, that's the first thought that comes to Goku's mind, but he also understands that everyone here is stupidly strong compared to him, clutching at the space where he was shot earlier, and he knows not to be stupid, and if he's going to go around doing stuff like that, he needs to make sure that he's a bit stronger so he can survive. All Goku wants to do right now is go back to Earth and revive his friends. And thinking about the Dragon Balls, Goku keeps the information about them to himself. Goku had just learnt how evil people can use the Dragon Balls for evil things after the recent fight with Demon King Piccolo. So right now Goku is in quite a mature mindset, hence why he's been playing it relatively cool for Goku. After a few minutes have gone by of Raditz talking over the scouter, he turns off the device and puts it onto the table. He looks over to his brother and begins to give him a bit more detail about his origin, not in a nice way, in an aggressive way, telling him how he is now a henchman of Frieza, and he will be until the day he dies. Or the day that... and stops himself there. He goes on to explain how Goku's life will be led from now on, and after hearing the fact that he has to kill innocent people and destroy planets, Goku kicks off again, thinking how he doesn't want to kill innocent people. He likes fighting, but only when people are wanting to fight. Raditz goes on to explain how this isn't an option. He will be doing this, or he will be killed alongside that planet of his, and all the people on it. Now, Goku gulps after hearing this, and remains silent. Raditz nods, thinking that his brother understands, and climbs into a bed, saying how they should get some sleep. The two other people they're going to have to meet soon are quite a handful. Now, once Raditz is asleep, Goku lies there, sort of unsure of what to do. Knowing that there is quite a big difference in power between himself and his brother, he just doesn't know what to do. Everyone around here is stronger than him. He's the weakest person for one of the first times in his life. He thinks that maybe he could escape and get back to Earth, and maybe with the power of everyone he knows they could defeat Raditz. But then he thinks about the fact that the only two people alive right now are Tien and Yamcha. They're probably not strong enough combined to take down Raditz. He eventually comes to the conclusion that this is his life until he can get stronger and hopefully defeat everyone here. But he doesn't know how he can get stronger. After all, it's not like he can train under anyone. After a little bit of pondering, he decides to just do some basic workouts, hoping that his power will slowly creep up and eventually surpass his brother. But for now, this is the only option he knows he has. Just basic workouts when everyone is asleep to make sure that they don't catch on to what he's doing. Now, I want to bring something up. I understand that Goku learned how to sense ki when training with Mr. Popo. I don't remember when he learned to suppress his energy, and it's not something I could easily find either. I did look for it for a while, but I couldn't find anything, and I have a sneaking feeling I'm wrong about this, but at the same time it's sort of something that caught my mind. I believe he might have learned to sort of do it during one of the tournaments. Keep in mind there is a line he said to Tien during their fight, that when he's in a battle, he uses something called his battle restraint, or battle restraint. I don't remember the line exactly, which is where he's holding back. Whether that's him concealing his energy or not, is something I don't understand. But I believe that Goku, to some basic understanding, knows how to suppress his energy at this point. And for this what if, I will be saying that Goku at this point in time can do this. Even if it's only on a very low level, even if it's only he can suppress his energy by a small amount, I am going to be using this. Now, after the week of waiting for the Saiyans to arrive, Raditz one day wakes up Kakarot, explaining how they're heading outside to a landing area, waiting for their two comrades. Goku is confused, but goes along. He has been playing along all week. There's no point in being stupid now. Now, they wait outside for an hour, and Goku is getting impatient. But luckily for them, Vegeta and Nappa do arrive. With the first thing the two say upon arriving is beginning to shit-talk Raditz. And soon Kakarot catches their eye. They look over to him, and the first thing they do is check his power level. At this point, it is saying it's 200. Note this is a bit lower thanks to the fact Goku is hiding his energy a bit. Both Nappa and Vegeta find this to be a pathetic waste of Saiyan blood, whereas Raditz is confused. He swore Kakarot's power was a bit higher the other day. He swore it was higher than that when he picked him up from Earth. But he keeps this to himself, putting it down to the faulty scouter he must have had, and also replaces his scouter. Now, while this has been going on in Raditz's head, Vegeta and Nappa are mocking Raditz, saying how he shouldn't have wasted his time getting this low life. With this getting under Goku's skin, after all, he is pretty strong. Now, Goku does eye up Vegeta and finds him to be very interesting. After all, this guy reminds him a bit of Tien, in the sense that he's a massive jerk. Both Goku and Raditz understand that these guys are their superior. Goku sheerly just from the fact of how his brother is acting so passive around these two, and hardly arguing back. Now, after this is done, Goku does try to introduce himself as Goku and says where he's from. But the Saiyans go back to calling him by his Saiyan name very fast, mocking the fact he wanted to be called Goku and not something more Saiyan-like. With the pair also laughing at the fact that Goku's wearing some stupid clothes. But they have had enough of this. They decide that they have pretty much done enough of a joke messing with these two for now. And they give the likes of Kakarot and Raditz a rundown of the upcoming mission. They go on to explain how there is a planet with some relatively high power levels, a bit weaker than Raditz is, that they are going to conquer. It shouldn't take them too long, and they will be leaving right away, with them getting Goku his own pod and a scouter just so they can communicate with one another. Not that the other three Saiyans care about Kakarot, it's just more that it's a standard issue thing to do. Now, this planet is about a month's travel away. While the other Saiyans choose to go into a hibernated state and sleep throughout the most of the trip, tries to figure out how to pilot the ship, just pressing buttons hoping something will happen, but he never manages to figure anything out. The course the ship is taking has already been routed, and once he figures this out, he gives up doing that. Goku then decides that he should probably try and get some training in, but he can't train in this small confined area, deciding that he will take up some time meditating, which he tried when he was training under Master Roshi, but he just never really liked it. But he actually kind of takes a knack to it here. He enjoys it, and after a while he does get bored and eventually just sleeps the rest of the trip as well. But he definitely needed that small break to think of what to do. Now, when the group are an hour away from the planet, they give a quick idea of what they're facing up against. And the powers they're told are nothing special, being in the low 700s, high 600s, with Raditz thinking that this will still be kind of a struggle for him. After all, like I said, Raditz is a bit weaker, so if I was to make these people have a power level around 600, 700, Raditz's power level is about 1,000 right now. So he still has a bit of ground to make. And also getting under Raditz's skin is the fact he has to babysit his younger brother, with the other Saiyans mocking him about this and laughing so hysterically it almost looks like their ships are shaking. Now, upon landing on the planet, the attack of the Saiyans begins. Now, there's only a few people on this planet who are really strong, and most of them are confined in this one small area. However, there are some spread across the other side of the planet. The plan is to leave Raditz and Goku to deal with the ones nearby, while Vegeta and Nappa deal with the further away ones. Now, the battle between the warriors and Goku and Raditz goes kind of well. For the most part, Raditz is able to hold his own. He's doing well, and as long as they're not grouping up on him too much, he's fine. But the issue arises is the fact he has to babysit his brother. Kakarot isn't strong enough to be dealing with any of these in a 1v1 fight, and for a little bit he was toying. When they were toying with him, he was holding his own, thanks to some tricks he had learnt on Earth and a variety of other things. But once they all start jumping him, he's in trouble, meaning that Raditz is having to waste valuable energy trying to save his younger brother. And for a while he does this until he gets fed up of it, saying to himself that if Kakarot's this weak, it's his own fault. He should have grown stronger. With Goku having to fight people who are much stronger than him, he eventually starts getting beat quite heavily. At first he was just playing defensively hoping to win, but now he's just getting beat brutally. And he's in a position where most people wouldn't be able to stand, and is pretty much on the, brinks of death. However, he's saved unintentionally by the likes of Vegeta. Vegeta had begun chasing some opponents around. After all, he's pretty much cleared a lot of his people off. Now just toying with his victims. Some that escaped earlier he is now chasing, and he begins blasting at them, with one of his blasts missing and actually hitting the area that Goku is getting beaten into the ground by a load of people. This blast hits the people around Goku, killing them. However, it did not kill Goku. Thanks to the bodies around him, it pretty much cushioned the blow for him. He still got hurt, but he's in a state where he could probably get up and move around. Vegeta, who casually looks down to where Kakarot is, before sending a blast off to the people who are escaping, them, thinks to himself that that's such a waste of Saiyan potential, before flying off to kill more people. Goku, who's beginning to pull himself off the ground and try and walk somewhere to get some cover, sees the fact that his brother is actually being swarmed and is losing. Goku instinctively starts heading towards his brother, just wanting to help, and from the sides, the enemies who are on Raditz beating him quite heavily begin to hear some weird words being spoke. The words Kamehameha, which is strange, and before they can process anything, a blue beam blasts through them, knocking them off Raditz. Not knocking loads of them off, but just giving Raditz enough leeway to slip out. Raditz looks over to see his younger brother in a fighting stance. He looks like he's barely able to stand, and to be honest, Raditz is genuinely shocked. Not a very Saiyan-like thing to do to save someone. It's really weird, but Raditz appreciates it. And once he looks at his brother getting into a fighting stance again, he's really confused again. He shouldn't even really be able to stand, yet alone be ready to fight. But Raditz also gets into a fighting stance. Two brothers are getting ready to fight the people who heavily outnumber them. Raditz leads and he deals a lot of good damage. He's the heavy hitter here. And at first Goku is trying to help by just throwing off people around Raditz, but after a while Goku just sort of becomes a certified punching bag. But this is also buying Raditz some valuable time. After all, some of them are having to concentrate on Goku, who's refusing to stay down. And slowly Raditz defeats all the enemies around them, and Goku finally collapses. He's not unconscious, he's just very heavily beaten and is having a hard time sticking together. This has taken them a few hours to do, and Vegeta and Nappa have completed the mission for the most part for them, with them only managing to take down this one city. After Raditz had caught his breath, he hears whining over the radio, thinking that Vegeta and Nappa are mocking him, which they are, like thinking how they have probably died during the battle. What weaklings. But luckily they didn't. Raditz looks at his brother, who is still collapsed, and almost flies off, thinking that he's dead weight, he's not even strong, but then thinks back to when he saved him, and grabs him by his clothes, not carrying him in a nice way, just carrying him towards the pods. Vegeta and Nappa are thinking that they had died, and are getting ready to leave, but when they see Raditz land nearby, and holding Kakarot of all things, Vegeta and Nappa do begin to mock them for saving, for Raditz for saving such a weakling, and two, for taking them so long to complete this mission. However, Raditz ignores this and throws Kakarot into a pod, sending him off to the closest Frieza planet. With Raditz getting into his pod, he also follows on behind. Vegeta and Nappa do the same. The Saiyans follow behind the leading ship, being Kakarot's, and eventually they arrive on a Frieza planet. Raditz takes his younger brother up to a healing chamber, getting him fully healed up, and it's going to take him a full day, but it's definitely helping the fact that he's getting some medical attention. Now, the other three Saiyans decide to celebrate their victory. Well, Vegeta and Nappa decide to celebrate how weak the low-class warriors are. Raditz decides to celebrate the victory. Now, during the mission, Raditz had got beaten up a little bad. It's nothing major, and he pretty much healed all of his injuries on the trip back, but it's just something worth noting. And during this time of celebration, Raditz is just getting mocked. So is Kakarot, but he's not there to hear it. To some degree, Raditz is still thinking about how his brother saved him. Seeing their father a lot in Kakarot, it sort of stumped him a little bit, which is why he was saved. And eventually the Saiyans during that day get orders to come and see Frieza whenever possible, and as soon as possible, with them deciding to wait for Kakarot to fully heal up, and then they'll head off to see him. Now, the next day Kakarot is fully back up, and Goku is beginning to wander around the area. He gets out of the pod with some alien doctor handing him his turtle wheel, which is hardly holding together, before Raditz walks in. He sees Kakarot is up and out, and he throws him some Saiyan armor. There's a bit of a silence between the two and the alien that is there, before Goku begins to throw on his old turtle gi, but Raditz shouts out above him, "Put on the Saiyan armor. It will defend you for your next battle," with Raditz then clicking his scouter subtly and reading Goku's power. 300. Okay, he keeps note of this. Now, Goku is kind of confused, but he keeps hold of his turtle gi and actually does throw on the Saiyan armor, with the two walking out and Goku starting to remember what happened. He looks towards his older brother, saying "thank you for saving me," which leads Raditz to blurt out he didn't save him out of his kind heart. No, he's not a softie like you. I did it because I didn't want to waste my time. That trip to Earth took me a while, you know. I didn't want to waste my valuable time, that's all. Goku smiles at this, as it's clear that Raditz was kind of flustered by that, and it seems he's not as bad as he might be letting on. Now, once he's up and at it again, all of them head off towards Frieza's ship, and it only takes them a few days, but they do arrive. And before heading into the meeting with Frieza, everyone warns Kakarot not to be stupid, to be quiet and stay quiet, with him agreeing to do this, mostly because Raditz was telling him to. After all, Raditz is the only person here he mildly trusts. After all, he saved him. Now, the meeting with Frieza is quite intense. As before, I explained, Goku is probably not the best person to be talking to someone like Frieza under these circumstances. However, Goku is being quiet. He's not talking, and he's not even going to talk unless, of course, he's addressed. Now, for a while, Frieza's just briefed on the mission and how it went. But finally, before they are allowed to leave, they ask who that person is. Where's the extra Saiyan come from? Frieza asks. With Goku not sure what to speak or say, Raditz jumps up explaining how, "Oh, this is my younger brother. I do apologise, Lord Frieza. I went to collect him a while ago, just because I thought it would be useful for your army, for the Empire, if we would have an extra Saiyan around. I do apologise though, Lord." With Frieza finding this to be an alright excuse. With Frieza looking at Kakarot and thinking he looks familiar. Weirdly familiar, actually. But he brushes it off. After all, he's seen thousands of Saiyans, he doesn't really care. Frieza then puts on his scouter, and he reads out whatever Kakarot's power level is. 250. Pretty weak. But after hearing this really confuses Raditz. As he thinks about it, this is the second time something like this has happened, and he swore it was 300 when he came out of the healing pod. He keeps this to himself and doesn't say anything to Frieza, but Frieza does begin to mock how weak all the Saiyans are, especially Kakarot. But after this is done, everyone leaves, and they are given new missions. Frieza has decided to split the Saiyans up for this mission, with two groups being Vegeta and Nappa and Raditz and Kakarot. The Prince takes the more interesting mission, while Goku and Raditz take the much easier mission. With this working out well for the pair, after all, the mission should be easy even by their standards. The four Saiyans split off into their two teams and head towards their planets. Now, the pod travel to their new planet does take a little while, but during the entire trip, Raditz is trying to think over what he felt. What the hell happened with Kakarot's power? And Goku is also kind of confused. You see, he's feeling much stronger than he's ever felt before. Even though he's been working out, it shouldn't be this much of a difference, should it? But he feels really empowered. He's going to ask Raditz about it when they land. Now, upon getting close to the planet, Raditz calls through on the scouter, saying that we should land a few miles out from the major city, in that forest over there, with him explaining to Goku what to do and how to land there. Now, once landing, Raditz puts his scouter into the Saiyan pod, leaving it there briefly. With Goku walking out of his Saiyan pod with the scouter still on, he looks over to his brother, seeing him not wear it. Raditz mimes the hand signs to put the scouter in the Saiyan pod, and upon doing this, Raditz walks over to his brother and starts asking some questions. He asks, on Frieza's ship, your power level read differently to what it did when you came out of the healing pod. Explain yourself. With Goku really confused about this, Raditz goes on to explain, I measured your power level when you were fully healed. Saiyans get Zenkais when you come close to death, and you came out much stronger, meaning that when Frieza read your power level, you were weaker somehow. Do you want to explain that to me? Goku sort of understanding this, and also getting the answer he was looking for, explains. He goes on to explain how he developed this thing on Earth called his power strain, something where he could hold back his powers so he could have a much more interesting fight while in tournaments. At some point he got so good at it, it felt like his energy was actually a lot weaker. It wasn't like he was holding back his punches. With Raditz realising that somehow this ability has given him the power to hide his true power from scouters, meaning that he can actually be a lot stronger than he's making out to be, and people wouldn't notice. Now Raditz is interested in this, and he begins to mutter to himself, well, this is great, if we could learn this, as Saiyans, we could grow stronger, people wouldn't notice, which means we could train and not get picked up on scouters, meaning that Frieza wouldn't get suspicious of us. And not only would I be able to overthrow Vegeta, I would be able to maybe one day dethrone Frieza. With Raditz saying this all out loud, Goku suddenly feels really comfortable. Goku says, so how does this Zenkai thing work? Because I've never felt so strong after a battle before. With Raditz giving a brief explanation in a much friendlier tone than he ever has. With Raditz also asking what Goku knows about training. And Goku actually explains how he's been training while everyone has been sleeping recently, since he was picked up from Earth ages ago. He's shocked to hear this. After all, he didn't even notice, but he's now curious. He asks his younger brother to show him his full power once he's got this scouter. With him grabbing it and clicking it on, he reads it out to be 415, meaning that Goku had nearly doubled in power since joining the crew. This is thanks to his training and the Zenkai. With Raditz now having a plan, he puts the scouter back off and puts it in his pod again. He walks over to his brother, explaining how, look, I know we haven't got off on the best terms, but supposedly could you teach me this suppressing trick? Goku thinks for a minute and believes he can, but then he asks his brother something. Would you promise not to kill innocent people and you won't, be evil? Raditz, knowing this would be impossible, tries to come up with a compromise. He agrees that he won't hurt people who can't defend themselves, and he will also try and help his brother get stronger and teach him how to fly. Goku thinks this over and believes this to be the best offer. The two come to an agreement and they begin talking about a possible plan. And Raditz even shares quite a bit of information about how Frieza treated the Saiyans, with Goku now wanting to help Raditz take down Frieza, which is shocking to Raditz. Now, the plan they have is that every time they go on a mission, they will spend some time secretly training. So they will extend the length of the mission. During this time, they will make out like the mission is a much harder job than it was, but secretly they will be training. Over time, they will try and increase how much they can suppress this energy by, and also increase their power, meaning that it looks like they've come back about the same strength. With Goku liking this idea, and also offering to teach Raditz some of the martial arts he learnt while on Earth, with Raditz having picked up on what Goku was doing during the battle on the planet they were on last time, he knows this to be a good idea. So far, they have a plan. They know what they're doing, and they begin it straight away. The two spend the first 2 days teaching each other the basics of the techniques they've promised one another. So Goku is learning how to fly and Raditz is learning how to suppress energy. And eventually, after the 2 days, they head off and take over the planet, with Raditz not actually killing anyone who can't fight for themselves, only ever killing people who are warriors. Now, during this time, they were messaging in every day, making it seem like this mission was much harder than it ever was. And eventually they do manage to take it down after only 5 days of, being on the planet. The first 3 days were coming up with a plan, doing some training and whatnot, while the other 2 days were actually capturing the planet. During this, Goku and Raditz had got hurt quite a bit, and they have decided that they'll head back to a Frieza planet to get healed. Now, some things they come across on their plan is going to be covered in the next part, but for now, the plan of the Sun Brothers is in way. Both Raditz and Goku have gained newfound respect for one another. Raditz sees his brother more Saiyan-like now, and Goku understands that his brother isn't fully evil person, and actually blames Frieza for what has happened to the Saiyans over time. And we'll join these two in the next part, if people want to see another part. For the most part, I like this What If. I think I could do some fun stuff with it. But for now, this is where I'm leaving it. I do hope everyone enjoys, and I want people to let me know what they think about this What If. Do they want to see it continue, or do they just want me to stop doing it? As I don't want to do one that people don't want to watch. But maybe for a while I might not be uploading the same old What Ifs. I've realised that I sort of go through a cycle, and I just want to get some new ones out there. I know I have two I don't cover really anymore, which is what if Gohan got the last wish, and the MCU one. The MCU one I'm waiting for art for, and the Gohan one I just haven't felt too inspired to write about. But for the most part, I hope everyone has a great day or a good night, and I will see you next time.